Welcome to our pod. And by that, I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. We are currently in The Year of the Dresden.
The Year of the Dresden.
And before we started recording, the last words out of Laura's mouth were, I could throw up.
I'm sick. I am totally sick. I've got the flu.
Totally. That's what's doing it. The nudity up and down this book that is like, but it's fine
Yeah.
because Harry has only eyes for Susan, maybe? I can never remember.
And also like any naked person that runs by.
I sent Laura and Veronica a meme of two memes, actually. One of Legolas going, a diversion. And then one of the guy from Moana going, oh, a diversion. And I said I had to send both all at once. And then Laura said that he got diverted by his own diversion.
Yeah, he can't even keep himself on task.
We'll get into it.
We'll get there.
Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying right now?
So I read, so just on a whim, like a couple weeks ago, I had picked up from the library Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt.
I've heard so many good things.
Well, it was really good. I was really enjoying it. And then somebody online, I was just like looking for people to talk about it with online, and somebody said the audiobook is fantastic.
I've heard that.
Stopped what I was doing and I started it over.
Oh, good.
I listened to the whole audiobook. The audiobook is fantastic. It is so good. This story is about, it's actually like a beautiful cover and everything too. But this story is about a woman named Tova who works at an aquarium as a maintenance person. She cleans up and does things after the aquarium's closed and everything. And she makes friends with, quote unquote, one of the creatures there, which is a Pacific octopus, a giant Pacific octopus named Marcellus. And
good
Marcellus is our other POV in this book, and Marcellus is a fantastic. Also, Tova is fantastic too. But this is such an interesting story about a woman who is dealing with a lot of loss and grief and is very unsure about her future. She's at an age where she doesn't know if she should be continuing on with work because she's getting older and unable to do a lot of the things that she needs to be able to do physically at her job. And Marcellus is in the ending stages of his life as an octopus because they usually live only, I think, 5 years max, and he has kept track of his captivity and he knows what day he is on each day. He'll mark that for readers, and he knows that his time is running out. And so when he discovers something about Tova, he puts the pieces together immediately, and he helps Tova learn this about herself and kind of reveal this information to Tova to help her out. He makes that his goal before the end of his life. And it's such a fun and interesting book, and also just really heartwarming. Like this, I kept telling my husband that because this was like a period of time where I did a bunch of quote unquote basic white woman things where I was I was listening to this audiobook.
You told me this.
And I was at Target and I went to Starbucks. I got groceries, and it was just like a very white woman fun day where I was like, okay, everything I'm doing is so basic white lady, but I love it.
But sometimes
because I am a basic white lady.
Here's the thing. Sometimes you need a basic white lady day, and it gives you the strength to do other things that you should definitely do that are not basic white women. Like, but sometimes you just need a good Target run, okay? And we all know that.
It was a lot of fun, and it's one of those things where, like, anytime I go into a Target, I'm like, damn it if I don't like this place. I try not to give into it, but it's impossible for me.
So also I've noticed, like, I don't go into Walmart that much because I was raised in a household that, like, Walmart was
Walmart either.
Evil, and it was like, and it is for so many points. Like, it was very, I just told Laura off mic, I went on a rant about antitrust laws and how we do not fight for competition, and Walmart is enemy number one for that.
Yeah.
But recently I had to go to Walmart because it is the only thing near our hometown. And I found the best pajamas that I've been wearing there and also some great Yankee candles. And I was like, you know what? I poo-poo on Walmart a lot because it is antitrust hellscape.
Mhm.
But also, people need affordable places to sometimes
Yeah.
buy $16 night
Hmm.
cute pajamas, and they need to be cute, and it's for
Right.
accessibility for
Right.
people who need it. And so just remember that when you're going into your Targets and Walmarts, they do know what they're doing and they are fun
Yeah.
places to shop. And sometimes
Yeah.
you need a place like Walmart for 14-year-old high school children to run around like complete
You know
assholes.
what? We used to hang out in Walmart a lot as college
Yeah.
kids. So I just going in there and just like looking randomly for things or getting snacks or what have you. So I can't knock on it too much. It's just one of those things I know a lot of people knock on Target, especially, and Starbucks too,
Yes.
for being basic white woman places. So when I was doing all these things in one day, I kind of started to associate this book in my mind with being a basic white lady book.
Honestly, though, yes, that book feels like it's just like obviously, I really want to read this book. I've heard great things about it. I've heard great things about the
It's
audiobook. So
really
all of
good.
that tracks.
It's really good, but
It
yes,
is still a
basic white
book
lady
club
book.
book. Yeah, it's a book
Yes.
club, basic white lady. Like, oh my
I think
gosh,
it's
I
like
just,
Read with Jenna book club, so that says it
yeah,
all.
that,
Like,
yeah.
but it doesn't take away from the fact that it is a good book and very heartwarming. And I kind of appreciate when we see people that we don't normally see. And
Yeah.
Tova seemed like someone that we don't normally see. We rarely have a protagonist that is old or an
Hmm.
old woman. We don't have somebody that isn't working like a big fancy job because usually in books, it's like the protagonist is like a journalist for the New York Times
I
or
have insert white lady title that we all dreamed of being in
right, it's like
college.
I'm an OBGYN and I work all the time and it's like the Mindy Kaling show, the Mindy
In the
Project.
Mindy
It's like
Kaling,
the
I
Mindy
mean,
Project.
she did end up making fun of herself in later
Oh
seasons
yeah.
of like, no, now she's going to get serious and she's going to lose her fiance over it. But also
Or the
that,
the
yeah.
protagonist is a young novelist or
Hmm.
what you're exactly right. It's the job that women are like told to dream about, you
Yes.
know. So it was nice that in this book that we did have a protagonist that you don't normally see who was an older person who was kind of in circles that she was in for a long time, but kind
Hmm.
of wanted out of them. You could tell that she had gone down a different path because of life experiences and didn't feel like she was fitting in with these people anymore. So that was
Hmm.
refreshing to see as well. And then just the POV of Marcellus was delightful. And there were some heavier things that you were dealing with in the other POVs that the POV of Marcellus brought a lot of fun to the book.
Oh,
And
good.
the narrators switch for POVs. So one narrator
Oh.
covered Marcellus, and then the other one covered the other POVs, which was an excellent touch. And the performance for Marcellus was actually Michael Urie from Ugly Betty. And
Oh
he was fantastic.
my gosh.
Fantastic. And this is just a slight spoiler, but there's one moment like towards the end of the book where we're getting like to the climax point and we haven't figured out or the main characters haven't figured out what's going on and we as readers know what's going on. You're kind of like on the edge of your seat, like, come on, when are they going to find out? And we
Right.
switch to Marcellus's POV and it starts off all of his chapters usually start off with day 1900 and whatever of my captivity. Well, it starts out like that and it's like day one. Oh, let's cut the shit. And I loved that so much.
Oh my
Like
gosh, that's so fun.
that moment in itself like had me like cackling. It was so funny. But this was just a really fun book and I just really liked it. It was just a good book to pick up for me personally just because, I've been going through a lot of change and reflection on my own life
Hmm.
and seeing like an older person who is also questioning their life and their past and hasn't quite been able to let go of past experiences when others have been like, yeah, that door's closed. It was really refreshing to see this portrayed and also just still a hopeful thing. And yeah, it was really good. I
Good.
really liked it. I
You're the
appreciate books that deal with grief and change a lot recently.
So I appreciate that analysis so much. I do want to bring it back to Michael Urie for a little bit
Yes.
because I love
Yes.
that actor. I think he's
He's
amazing.
fantastic.
He's so, and I was just thinking, I need to restart, like, I need to keep watching Ugly Betty because I forgot I
Yeah,
was watching it, but it is like, it's a more chill show. Like, it's one where you're
sure.
like, I could walk away from this and then come back and I'm just exactly where I left off.
Mhm.
But he was on one of my favorite pop culture podcasts, Keep It, and they were like talking about his role and he was like, oh yeah, well, like I wasn't a guaranteed person for the pilot, and he was like, so I knew that
Because
I
they were gonna
really.
switch around the assistants, you said, I
Mhm.
believe.
Yeah, and so he just started mimicking Vivica A. Fox's mannerisms, and people thought it was so funny that they just like kept him on because they, and
Yeah,
like she later saw it, she was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing that. That's such like an inspired choice." And he was like, "I just needed something to make me noticeable, so I just
right.
started like pretending to be her and doing exactly what she was doing behind her, and it just like worked for
Amazing.
him." And I love that like he took that and he was like, I know that like this isn't, I'm not guaranteed this role, so I'm gonna try my hardest to keep it. And I
I'm gonna
just,
put it all out there.
yeah, and I love that. That's so amazing. So sorry,
Yeah.
I had to go on a
No,
tangent on how
no,
much I love
absolutely.
Michael Urie.
He's so good. He's so good. Even in like more serious, quote unquote, serious roles, like that Netflix Christmas movie that he was in.
Oh
I
yeah,
liked that one. I think
single
that
all the
he has,
way.
yeah, Single All the Way. I think he has quite a bit of range, honestly, that if we could just get a better writer to like not make a bad rom-com for him, that would be
Yeah.
great, because that was not his fault that that movie was not that good. It it was definitely Netflix's fault.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but and that movie was not horrible. I still watch it every year because I think it's cute.
Look, it's right up there with like most all other Netflix. Like there are certain tiers. It's definitely not the
Yeah.
worst. That
Oh
one
no, there's still all
is
those Princess
the
Switch movies,
princess
so
switched again, switched Aru.
yeah, like number four, like there's four princesses switching.
Or
That's probably the worst
the
one.
what's the stupid
The
one where
Knight's
she's a
Tale.
well, the Knight's Tale is also terrible, but not the Vanessa Hudgenses ones. The
Oh,
ones
I'm thinking
about,
of Vanessa Hudgens.
I was thinking about the Prince one, the Royal Prince or something, whatever,
Oh,
the
A Christmas
Christmas
Prince.
Prince, a Christmas Prince, and I've only
See, I
seen
think the
number
Vanessa
two.
Hudgens ones are worse than the Christmas Prince.
So my problem is happy June, guys. Happy Christmas. My problem is I've never seen the first or the third one of the Christmas Prince movies. I've only seen the second one.
What a weird place to jump in.
I well, I just wanted to pull like Jamie and Caitlin do on the Bechdel cast, and they often just jump around. And
Ah,
so
yes,
it
yes.
was because I had not seen the first one, and then I moved in with my roommate, and she was like, "Do you want to watch the Christmas Prince 2?" And I was like, "Well, I've not seen
Sure.
Christmas Prince 1." And then
You'll probably pick up on the plot easily.
you do, except
There's a
except
prince.
the
It's
evil
Christmas
cousin
time.
Simon in the second one like is good, or he's good in the second
Oh
one when he
my.
was evil in the first one. And I remember he like pops out of the crowd, and I was like, "Who is that? That's so dramatic when you have zero context for this
Oh my
man."
gosh.
So I do remember watching a royal wedding, a Christmas Prince wedding,
Royal
blah,
wedding.
blah, 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 when she can't be a journalist anymore. And it's like, honey, you run a blog. Like, I think you'll
Oh
be
my.
okay. Um, okay.
Yeah, it's
Anyway,
it's not Michael's fault that it's
happy
Netflix's
Christmas.
fault. It's Netflix's fault. But this audio narration of his, like, I need to find all of his other books that he's all of his other audiobooks that he's narrated, because I think that they would just be so good. And if we're not throwing more books in his direction, that's a mistake because he's fantastic. But the other thing that I watched was, I guess I didn't watch that Netflix movie recently, but the thing that I watched was Idea Man, the documentary that was on Disney Plus about Jim Henson. Have
Oh,
you
was
heard
it
of
good?
this?
No, I have not.
It
Tell
was
me all about
okay.
it. Okay.
I think I
Well,
was kind of expecting more from it, honestly. Like
mhm.
people were sharing about it. They're like, I'm gonna cry watching this, aren't I? And I didn't really get too emotional watching it, but it was interesting. Some of the parts were interesting. I think it honestly could have stood to be a long documentary, and
Mm.
they only did like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours,
Oh, that's a
and
little
th
sad.
there was just too much to put into that short period of time, and I kind of wish there was several episodes of it, or just
Yeah.
like make it another hour at least, because it seemed like a lot of the things were shortened. We didn't get as much depth into certain topics, like things like Fraggle Rock were just like briefly mentioned, and I wish we had more on that. I wish we had more on his death. I wish we had more because his death was very interesting to Jim
Yeah.
Henson. I'm talking about Jim Henson for listeners who don't know what Idea Man is about. It's a documentary that was I had assumed was going to like highlight a lot of aspects of Jim Henson's life, but we get a lot of like the origin story in terms of like Jim's up. I guess it's not even a ton of that really. We get some upbringing information on like how Jim grew up in rural Mississippi on
Mm.
like a USDA research farm,
Okay.
and then he ended up he sounds like an extremely hardworking individual because he was doing so much to pursue film, and he was making all these puppets and everything and doing all these things and putting in all this time that people generally do not have to do, and he was just going above and beyond in order to get his work seen and to be on television and everything, and he seemed to be just like a really fun and inspired person,
Yeah.
and I think that he comes off as extremely hardworking in the documentary. And his children were several of his children were involved in the documentary. They interviewed them and stuff. And then Frank Oz, who was also one of his longtime collaborators, was part of the documentary. Clips of his wife Jane were included, but I kind of just wish we would have had more time to dig into the individual projects.
Yeah.
They mostly talked about, obviously the Sesame Street and the Muppets. And
Hmm.
I get that, but they did mention Dark Crystal, they did mention Labyrinth and how they were flops basically that became cult classics.
Yeah.
And I kind of just wish that we would have had a little more of like the inspiration behind specific
Right.
things because they would say like, oh, he really wanted to do this or whatever, and that's why he did this or whatever. And it's like, well, but but why? Because
Right.
he was interested in X, Y, or Z. Like you can't just say, well, he really wanted to do this and then move on, And it was a Ron Howard production, which
Mm.
I like Ron Howard, but come on, we need a little more depth here, my
Yeah.
guy. And it was an okay documentary, but not great. I wish there was just more.
I feel like too many times people think like certain skills are just like they're like Ron Howard. He could definitely do that because he liked Jim Henson, and it's like, but he's not like a
Hmm.
documentarian. So
No,
like that's
he's he's all about like making it cutesy, and
yeah,
I
and
I think that he did that to an extent, but I really wish we would have had more. Like it's a pretty documentary to look at, but I wish we would have had more in terms of like the actual information
yeah,
and a more depth into Jim specifically, just because it was very surface level and you kind of wanted to know more about like, oh, like when he got to this point, they mentioned he really wanted to sell it to Disney or whatever. I'm like, okay, obviously Disney produces this, so we're gonna get a super
a little,
biased
yeah,
view.
right,
But at the same time, you can still have like, oh, he had a lot of anxiety about this or that, and leading up to it, why did he want to do this? But
yeah,
it was interesting, and at the same time, I wanted more, and I think that's okay. I
yeah.
don't think that all things that I watch have to be like they knocked it out of the park. This is
I'm sorry,
wonderful.
everything I have to watch has to be amazing. That's why I forced my future sister-in-law to watch Crossroads, the Britney Spears movie with
Oh my.
me.
I have never watched that.
Oh, Laura. Oh my gosh, we have to watch that movie. It's on Netflix. This could be one of our
I
Patreon
have
episodes.
listened to the Bechtel cast talk about it, and I think that that suits me for a
No,
lot of movies where I'm just
honestly,
like,
no.
that's okay.
I'm sorry, you're wrong because Crossroads was a movie I rented at least 7 times from the video store.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
I watched it
Okay.
so many times, and I'm sorry, it was written by Shonda Rhimes, Queen of Shondaland
You mean
herself.
Bridgerton?
Bridgerton famous Shonda Rhimes wrote Crossroads. Why did that happen? They also did an episode of Crossroads on how did this get made. Guys, I adore that movie so much. It was such a good time. We did a back to back with that and Coyote Ugly, and it was a great time. So, we should watch it for the Patreon sometime because it is right up there with Laura and I
Okay.
just pushed out on our Patreon. You should go listen to our live reaction of
To Madam Web.
Madame Web, which then that Friday it released How Did This Get Made, did an episode on it. So I feel
Oh
like they
wow.
stole our idea.
Jason Mantzoukas, stop listening.
He just loves our podcast so much.
He loves
But
us and we love him.
Laura and I did a live reaction to Madam Web, and it was a ton of fun, and it was
Yeah.
very funny because that
We
movie
crack ourselves
was
up, honestly. Like,
terrible.
what are you talking about? That's like one of the
It was
best movies I've seen in a while.
just the amount of times where Dakota Johnson was like, I don't know what's going on in the script. She
If you
had
want to
so
get the
many
full thoughts, you gotta listen.
there were so many times, guys, where she was like, I have no idea why this is happening. And it's like,
And neither
neither
did
do
we.
we. So
Nobody had a
yeah.
clue what was going on.
Nope, not a single person. So, make sure you're checking that out. But Crossroads, Laura, that could be another
I
one where we
I
do a live
guess.
watch. People
I
sound off on our Patreon or tweet at us
do
if
I
you
need
think
to
we should
watch
do
this?
Crossroads.
There's a lot of movies that I just feel like I can just listen to other people talk about them and just be like, okay, that's
Yeah,
fine.
but you could also be someone who participates in some of those, like
Uh,
Crossroads.
I don't know.
That's like me with the Baboon Heart movie. I've never seen the Baboon Heart movie, but I think about it a
Oh my
lot. So.
gosh. That baboon heart. Another thing I've been
uh,
enjoying, which you know that I love Conan O'Brien, but Conan
mhm.
O'Brien needs a friend. That
Mm.
podcast is just very funny. And I've been going back and watching some of the things on YouTube too, because they also post the podcast on YouTube. And it's funny, they started talking about how there's like almost a lore associated with this podcast now because fans are trying to figure out if they're wearing the same clothes in the episodes, like how many they shoot in a day and that kind of
Oh,
thing. And it's very funny. And then Conan is just a chaotic person in him
yeah.
in all situations. And he is just really funny to listen to. But also I just kind of appreciate the way that he can be chaotic and at the
Hmm.
same time come off as very genuine. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know that he's always the kindest. I don't know that people always have to be super kind. He seems
Yeah.
kind, but I don't know that he's always the kindest. Like some things that he'll say to his assistant or whatever, I'm like, well, that's rude that you did that, or that's not the nicest way to go about that. But at the same time, I do think overall he seems like a kind person. There's probably people that are like, he's terrible. You've never heard about this, this, and this. And I
I've
try
actually
not
heard that
to.
he's pretty good. So I think you're on safe grounds to say
Okay,
with
well,
knowing what we know
knowing
now.
what we know now, he seems pretty good. And I I do appreciate how it doesn't matter like if he has a major celebrity on or recently they've started doing like Conan O'Brien Needs a Fan where they
Mm,
have like just regular people
regular
from
old
wherever who
dudes.
are listening to call in and talk to him. It doesn't matter if he's talking to one of these people or if he's talking to Carol Burnett or whoever. He seems to extend the same amount of kindness to everyone and compassion to everyone while still like he's gonna make fun of you if you say you went to clown college. He's gonna make fun of Carol Burnett if she says that she was doing this before X, Y, or Z before she came to the recording. Like he's gonna
Yeah.
make fun of you, but he's also going to say, I really appreciate that you do that type of work. That's awesome that you've done
Yeah.
all these things. And it doesn't come off as fake. It comes off so genuine. And I just really appreciate that about him that he seems to be able to kind of get into a way that he can like connect with people of all
Yeah.
paths. And I think that's kind of a rare thing that we don't have many people who are able to connect in that way with other people and come off in such a like genuine way. So I've been
Yeah.
really liking his podcast just because it's chaotic and he says such bizarre things. And at the same time, he's just very fun and nice. He just
Oh,
seems like a nice
good.
guy. And again, knowing what we know now,
Yes.
I'm in the dark about him, but I've listened to a lot of his podcasts and he seems like a nice ginger. And
A nice ginger. That's not
he's a nice
guaranteed. You never know.
100% Irishman,
Oh,
which
good.
he will mention. But
Of
yeah,
course.
so that's kind of what I've been enjoying. A lot of Conan O'Brien, a lot of TV that is on Disney Plus. I've already talked about. Bad Batch a lot, so nothing new there. Hannah, what have
Never.
you been reading, watching, and or
So
enjoying?
I listened to the third book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, The Titan's Curse.
Yay!
I really liked this. I will say that I listened to the audiobooks for these. They're
Yeah,
good audiobooks,
yeah.
but sometimes the narrator will choose like certain like the Pegasus's voice in this
Oh no.
always takes me right out because he's like,
Oh no.
"Hey, boss!" And I'm like,
No! Isn't it supposed to be doing like a Jersey Shore accent?
I don't know, but he's always like, "Hey, boss, I'm here
That's what
to
I was
help
picturing, was
you."
like a Jersey Shore accent. I thought that's what it was for
It
if
doesn't sound like that,
oh
but
no.
so sometimes his choices and like this was the book where they had the hunters
Mhm.
and so one of them, she talked a lot like this, and so
For
sometimes
Artemis, right?
not for Artemis, for one of her huntresses, and so some of it just
No,
like,
that's what I mean. Like the
oh,
hunters are Artemis's
yes,
hunters,
yes,
right?
they're Artemis's hunters, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there were certain things in the audiobook where I do really like this audiobook narrator. No
Hmm.
hate to them. They're famous for these books. So like
Yeah,
me
they're doing
having
fine.
certain reactions to them is not
Also,
me
Hannah, this is a middle grade
crapping
book.
on them at all.
You're
Yeah,
in your
this is a middle
30s.
grade. I'm in my 30s, and sometimes hearing a horse talk like this is
Yeah,
just
it's
really
fun
funny.
for 9-year-olds.
Yeah, it's
10-year-olds
just one.
dig it.
Yeah, they love it. And I'm like, that's great for you. I am confused, but that is just me. And so I did like these a lot. I thought that the third book was really good for like scene setting some of the like bigger problems to come.
Mhm.
And I also just thought like it was a really good look at uh specifically like something I've noticed in protagonists as they get older is sometimes I'm like, why are you in this plot? You're kind of the villain in this because you can't keep your nose out of it. And like for plot purposes, that makes sense, but
Mhm.
I get frustrated. So sometimes in this book, I got pretty frustrated with Percy Jackson. I'm like, good. I think that that's also healthy to teach little kids. Like,
Yep.
hey, if you are bursting into the scene, it doesn't always make you right. And sometimes it gets you into stickier situations. So I liked
I
that
think that's
overall.
absolutely right because I think that a lot of the things I love about that series in particular, when it's again different coming at it as an adult, so I'm
Yeah.
looking at it from the viewpoint of like, how are we depicting this young boy to other
Mhm.
children is how I'm coming at it a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that you're right, and that's what makes the series great is that Percy is not always a likable
No.
character and is really growing and
Mhm.
learning through others and through his own experience
Yeah.
how to be better and how
Well,
to give himself grace also.
and even in this book, like the centaur who like teaches him is like, I don't really think you're right for this journey. And I'm like,
Yep.
I like when you can teach kids like emotional healthiness and like
Yeah.
taking into account like adults' perspective. And it's not like he's an evil adult. Like Percy does
Mhm.
understand what everyone's saying, and then he still makes his own choices. So
That's
great. I had
another
it.
thing about
Yeah.
these books, like this, that young boy protagonist being able to have like such a range of emotions and
Mhm.
also like cry and be understanding and care
Yep.
about people. It seems very rare
Yeah.
for these type of books that are likely targeted at young boys in middle grade.
Also normalize, like I did look up a few spoilers, but like when I was little, I always again thought that like I grew up in a very healthy household. My parents loved each other very much. I thought like books always ended with like parents getting back together again. And I think that it is healthy to write these books where it's like, hey, these parents that you meet, they're not getting back together with the gods or
Yeah.
goddesses that they were with. And it's like that's very
Hmm.
healthy. Like,
Yeah,
because it's good to teach kids that like families come in all different shapes and sizes, and that's okay.
absolutely.
So I
Absolutely.
think that that's really good to
And
show like
also
extended family experience.
A plus for representation of people who have dyslexia or uh
Yeah.
ADHD.
Mhm. And I like that he always like points out how ADHD fails him, but he can also recognize it. Like he is a
Yeah.
smart enough character to be like, so ADHD affects my judgment. Like I will
Hmm.
sometimes make decisions that I cannot take back. And I'm like,
Yep.
same. And I'm 33. So good for you for recognizing it. I wish I could recognize it.
So I think if I'm remembering right, if somebody can correct me if they know more of the Rick Riordan lore on this, but I believe that Rick Riordan wrote Percy specifically, like wrote these books and Percy specifically as a character with dyslexia and ADHD because his son
Oh,
has dyslexia and ADHD,
that's
which
fun.
I thought was great.
Yeah, I
So,
think that that's great. So I really like this. I think they're good books. I got the
mhm.
fourth one out on audio, so I'm listening to them and laughing when the horse talks.
Yeah.
So I also randomly I was traveling a little bit via car. So this weekend I listened to another audiobook called A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. I honestly
I
was
feel
like,
like I've heard of this.
so here's the thing. I was looking at it and I was like, why did I pick this book up? And it's because both FTF and fiction fans had
Ah,
the author on
yes.
their
That's
podcast.
right. I
And
was gonna
so
say, did I
it
just hear about this book?
here's the thing. They had them on for a different book, but I saw
Oh,
them on Hoopla and I was like, yeah, I'll pick that up. And I don't think I knowingly picked. I think I was influenced just by seeing the author's name because I hadn't listened to the
osmosis.
episodes yet. Yeah, it was just like full on osmosis.
Yes.
So it was available on Hoopla. I downloaded it. I listened to it, and then I was like, why did I listen to this? And it was because they were on podcasts that I listened to. So, neither here nor there. But A Dowry of
Shout
Blood,
out fiction fans and FTF.
it is kind of like it's I would say very similar to Interview with a Vampire. Like
Hmm.
it's a vampire book, A Dowry of Blood. I know you're shocked. Um
What? Full
it's
Moon is about
it's full moon. Full moon.
werewolves?
Is it about werewolf? A Dowry of Blood. Um so I will say like I liked this book. I thought it was pretty good. Like it's a lot like Interview with a Vampire where it's like I am an old vampire and I was changed by a narcissistic evil man. And I think that that's a very effective narration. I thought it was very good. It was an interesting tale. I will say sometimes I get a little bit sick of the like I was just this like soft little meek person, and like sometimes because I read Interview
Yeah.
with a Vampire within the last year, it felt a little repetitive. It's not this author's fault. That's my fault for reading these like in close succession between one another, where I just saw a
Hmm.
little bit too much overlap. And sometimes I think if I've read a book like this where it's like, oh, it's a historical fiction about vampires. I don't read that much historical fiction. I don't read that much about vampires. So I was like, oh, I'm excited to see like what they do differently. And it felt like some things they didn't do as differently. But the things I liked was like they looked at like a complex like coven almost of vampires where they're like all in relationships together and the dynamics are very much talking about their interrelational aspects with this like narcissistic sire among them all, and it kind of looks into like the psychology of what makes you go along with certain things and why you like go into things like certain ways. And I thought that was really effective and I really enjoyed that. And I thought the narrator did a great job. So it was very dark, it was very broody. It worked. I think I had just read Interview with a Vampire a little bit too recently, so it was just sitting in
Can we
my
talk about
mind
this
too
briefly? Because
much.
I just had a similar experience where I had read a cozy book, which I will talk about in the future, but
Mhm.
at this moment I'm not going to talk about it. But I had read a cozy book and I was being pretty hard on it, honestly. And I don't think I was giving this book the credit that it deserves.
Right.
And I really think it's because I had recently read two Becky Chambers books,
Mm,
which are so cozy and
yes.
heartwarming and honestly like such standouts in my mind for the representation that they have and the deep
Mhm.
topics that they get into, that I was being harder on this other book because
Mhm.
I was trying to make it live up to the expectations of this one series and it was not doing that. And
Yes.
it's not that book's fault. This other author did a great job writing this
Right.
book and is doing nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with this book. It's just the way that our brains, if we have something that has
Recency bias.
recency bias, thank you,
Yes.
something so recent is really quick to kind of sour our experience.
Yeah.
And it's not fair when it's a piece of work that is really good and
Yeah.
deserves more credit. That's definitely a thing that I have noticed that I also do.
And I think that's just like I haven't really read that many vampire fictions like since
Mhm.
high school or things like that. So it's just very different to read this and
Sure.
like yeah, but I thought like some of it was really effective and I was just like I think it's just like it has certain undertones of Interview with a Vampire. So like
Yeah.
if you've just read Interview with a Vampire, save this one for a time where it's a little bit
Take
fresher
two
in your
beats
mind,
and then
or read this one instead because lots of people have read Interview
okay.
with a Vampire and that book was long. I really liked it. I did, but it was
was
long.
long.
It was a really long
It
time of
was
hearing
long.
a man be like, why can't I get away from this toxic man? Am I
Oh
in
my
love with him? And
gosh.
it's like, yeah, probably.
Oh,
Um,
ew.
so, just so much. But yeah, that was my other audiobook. And I've been reading a lot for podcasts and or Mega May. So I have like 7 books that I'm currently reading. and, and I just haven't been able to finish any of them. One of them has been on my I've been reading it, quote unquote, since 2022. Haven't picked it up in a year, but it's Vanity Fair. And I'm like, I could read that book
Mhm.
from starting right now and know exactly where I was because it is just heavy and thick. But I'm also reading
Sure.
nonfiction. I'm reading Namina Forna's The Eternal Ones, and I had to buy the audiobook because I own the audiobook for the other 2, and I just haven't gotten around to
Sure.
downloading it when I'm on Wi-Fi. I'm also like reading 4 other books at the same time. So
Oh
I've
my
been reading a
gosh.
lot. I haven't been finishing a lot. So I'm
That's
sorry,
that's a
guys.
lot going on. I've also
Uh
got a couple of books in the works, but they are specifically podcast related, so you'll hear about them,
yeah, you're gonna hear about the book Hannah read this weekend, specifically, literally like in 2 weeks. So,
Yeah.
and then for watching, I continue to watch Taskmaster. It's a good time.
That's
Everyone
what's
should watch
sad.
it. So just normal television, and then of course Madame Web, the binding mystery about 3 girls who may become spider women. Who knows?
Sydney
Uh,
Sweeney.
We've never seen more clearly, guys.
I'm
I did
I
name
think it's left
the
me confused for life.
Laura doesn't really see much of our Patreon. I did name the episode in association with Marvel.
Lovely.
But now should we be in association with Dresden and dive into the
In
final section?
association with Jim Butcher.
In association with Jim Butcher, the Dresden Files, Full Moon. Guys, in this section of the book, we actually get to have the name of the book title right after a sexy
Honestly,
sex
I
time.
have thought the entire time listening to the book that he was saying full moon, but he may have been saying full. I
He
put that
kept
several
saying,
times in there because I'm like, was he saying full or fool?
but was he saying fool? Ooh, just rumbled thunder after you said that over here. So it's very atmospheric.
Oh,
Full
okay.
moon. Um, no, at one point, right after he has sexy sex time with Susan, when he's like bleeding and bruised and probably
When
shouldn't
I
be
was
having sex.
pissed off
Um,
that they were having sex, I'm like, right now?
this brought me back to a time where I'm like, oh yeah, in the 90s, people would just have sex at the drop of a hat, and now you're an adult, and you're like, no one's doing that. We're
No,
busy.
no.
um, but yeah, they have sexy sex time, and then he's like, it's a full moon, and I'm like, why now?
It's too late.
But before we get to the sexy sex time, he is getting beaten up, and he is about
Yeah.
to die because Parker is about to kill him.
Well, he's got like a big pipe that he's gonna hit him
Yeah.
with.
And I just love how basic these white names are. Parker. Imagine being murdered by a man named Parker. Just imagine that, guys.
What's his name? Like Jim or Mark or something like that.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Peter
And so
Parker.
he's about
It's
to
Peter Parker.
Peter Parker. Peter Parker. Madame Webb. She saw this coming. She tried to stop it, but she could only see 5 seconds
She can
in
only
the
do so
future,
much.
so it wasn't helpful. So anyway, Marconi shows up and he's like, you can't kill him because I'm paying you not to kill him. And Parker's like, I get him when you're done with him. And Marconi is
Parker's
like,
like raging out and he's like standing there holding a tire iron and they're like trying to talk him down and he's like, you broke that circle that McFinn was in. You knew he was a Loup-Garou. And I'm still laughing at Loup-Garous.
the Loup-Garou is coming after them. Well, and so that's the thing. Like, Parker thinks Marconi broke the circle.
Yeah.
Marconi is like, people are after me, so I'm trying to get the FBI to protect me. I don't know what's going on. And like everything is just kind of messy. Like it's just
Mhm.
very messy at this point, including
Including
Harry.
Marconi being like, Dresden, I'll offer you a job and I'll even protect Murphy.
Yeah,
Like,
Harry is sitting there like sweating buckets and like just bleeding profusely. And he's
yeah.
like, but do you want a job?
Which is something we need to mention more often in this book, particularly that Harry has been injured for so long and continues to persist and be full of action and fighting a bunch of people. And I'm like, it's just not believable at this point.
So I
You are
feel like
sleeping.
I did read this final section and I was like, I do feel like Jim Butcher in the last book was like, you know what? I just didn't hit them hard enough with the gore. And so then he's like, I
It-
am going to make Harry go to an inch of his life at least 8 times in the same novel because Harry perseveres.
I will say this is something that Butcher does really effectively is write like violence and
Yes.
gory moments. Like a lot of the scenes with the werewolf violence, it's like very graphic. And I'm like, if it's getting that kind of reaction out of me, it's because he's writing it well.
Yes. And he does cut it with good humor moments too. So you're
Yes.
not just like, you
Yep.
can actually place yourself in the scene as someone who has a
Yeah.
hard time reading action. So a lot of my notes are going to be like, and then fighting happens. So,
And then a
guys,
spine was ripped out and his head was smashed in.
and then wolves started eating Parker, just your
They ate
everyday
his organs
occurrence.
and like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so he does a very good job. So Marconi's like, "Do you want a job?" And Parker's like, "You said I got to kill him. You said I got to kill him." And he's just becoming a feral wolf at this
Yeah.
point.
You can
Um,
see it in their eyes.
and so he's just, and then all hell breaks loose. Denton shows up as like
Hmm.
Harry tries to flee.
Yeah, he's trying to get out of there because it's like chaotic and they want him to like they give him a pen and like want him to sign this deal
Fine,
and
yeah.
he's like no, like we're leaving and like they're shooting at each other in there and he goes outside and Denton is there and he's like WTF? Like
And Denton looks shocked, and then he's like, "Kill the wizard. He's seen too much." I'm like, he
I-
really hasn't at this point because he ain't
well,
seen nothing yet. So like, it's very odd that he's like, at this point, he's seen too much, and I'm like, oh, you have
and
no idea.
really because like things go off the rails in the last part of this book. But I was proud of myself because I did have a note here. It was like Avi Denton is a werewolf. Called that earlier when Harry couldn't get a read on him.
Oh my gosh. And so Denton is like, he's seen too much, even though he's seen very little at this point. He is
Yeah.
very confused. He thought it was just Marconi and Parker up until when Denton showed up. He probably would have trusted him a little bit, but I guess not. And so this is also where Jim Butcher gets really quippy because the end of the last chapter was like, I hate it when a plan goes south. And the last sentence in this chapter is talk about frying pans and fires. What does that mean?
Out of the frying pan and into the fire.
Oh, I was so confused.
Oh,
I've never heard that phrase.
yeah, it's out of the frying pan and into the fire, so it's a lot hotter.
Oh, okay. So that
He's in
is
a
why
hotter
that phrase then.
situation. I feel like Butcher's writing, he loves to acknowledge like common phrases and stuff, but it's such a mix of like more modern things and also like super old school things like back in my day when we used to spin the hoop around in the driveway and it's like, wait, what? Who did
Harry
that?
Dresden is a million years old. So
I know. That's what I mean. It's like this is the oldest 25-year-old they've ever encountered.
So talk about frying pans and fires. So
Talk
then
about
he
frying
like has
pans and
to
fires.
run back in as Denton and Ben are like trying to shoot
Hmm.
him. Denton and Ben also have a moment where like Ben is literally like humping him and being like, "Can we take him? Can we?" And I'm like, why are the women in these books always like feral for men? Like they just can't hold their vaginas
So
in. Like,
are you I think you're a little bit farther than me, but I just want to mention that so there's two kinds of wolves that are like getting into it at this point because there's now we know FBI wolves
yes.
and
And
there's
we
the
find
street
out that
wolves.
they're Hexen wolves. And then you have the
Yes.
street wolves who are more like they're not Hexen wolves, but they're
Mhm.
another version. They're not the Loup-Garou. They're like
Right.
they're common street wolves. So
And then Denton or Dresden notices Dresden, there's too many of these names that are
I
like too
know.
similar. It's like
Yeah.
difficult. But Dresden notices something on Denton's like belly area and he's like, that looks suspicious. I can use that later. And
He's
then he's like,
literally wearing a wolfskin belt and he's like,
yeah,
"Oh, he's wearing a wolfskin belt." And I'm like, "Wow, Harry, I didn't know that you were that good at taxidermy."
he's not.
Like,
and and then he's like sitting there like with all this chaos going on and there's like a paw digging under
yes, I did love
and
this
he like
part.
hits it and he's like he's stomping on it and
He
hitting it and stuff
goes,
and Tara's like stop, I'm trying to
okay.
help you.
So yes, before Ben is dry humping Denton,
Yes.
Harry is trying to get out of the garage because he had to run back in because they were shooting arrows at him.
Yes.
And he sees like a paw coming up and he's like, dig to this. And he starts like stomping on it. And Tara has to shift back into human form and be like, Harry Dresden, stop doing that. And he's like,
I'm
oh, a
trying to help
helper.
you.
And so then he's like trying to dig himself out with
Mhm.
her help. And then this is where Ben is like, you should turn into a wolf, my love. And she's just like, I'm just like, why do
Well, and
women
this
have
is where
no,
I put a note. I was like, they're being creepily sexual, and I'm wondering if
no, they're being
shape-shifting is
purposely sexual,
if it's
sexual.
supposed to be erotic to them. Like, is the shape-shifting erotic, or what is the erotic part of this?
So I
And
think it's supposed to be animalistic. And so people think animals just be humping every single second of the day, I
well, and
guess. So it's
my
supposed to like
notes
lower
continue
your
to say
inhibitions.
they change, and then what's the goal? Are they going to have sex?
No, I think it's just supposed to be like, oh, it'll feel so like I think it's all foreplay in a weird way, but it's just like, oh yes,
But it works for
change
no
because
one.
then you're powerful. And it's like, but and Ben is being so aggressive where it's
Mhm.
like, this is uncomfortable to be around. Like, could you imagine if you were hanging out with your friends and one of your friends was going that hard at their significant other? I think I'd be like, so it's time to go home. I'd rather stare into the eyes of a wizard than be
Eh.
here right now.
Depends on the
Like,
wizard, because if it's Dresden, no. But
um,
I also do have a note right here that says the wolves kill Parker and eat him, and it's pretty descriptive. And it says Butcher
yeah.
should write horror because he writes disturbing things really well.
And so, yeah, he ends up like fleeing and trying to get out with Tara. And she brought her pack of pocket protectors.
Yeah, she's
And
got the computer gang.
they're like trying to escape to get to this van. But the redheaded FBI agent, the amount of times he's like, Harris, the
Harris.
redheaded FBI agent. I'm like, we know
Hold
who
on just a
Harris
second.
is.
The wolf that right before the wolf jumps at him, he says, "With great power comes great responsibility, Hannah," at the
Oh.
end of chapter 24. And I put, what freaking Marvel comic did he read before writing this? This was
Also,
before we watched Madam
Madam
Web.
Web, but also Madam Web, with great with when you accept power, the responsibility will come. Isn't that what the
Yeah.
line was? Okay, sure. And so
So Roger
he
Harris does lunge at him. It's the
he
redheaded
lunges
kid
at him,
with
and the
big ears.
redheaded FBI agent with big ears, and Harry rips off the Hexen Wolf belt that could
Yeah.
help him change. And it's also pretty graphic how he rips it off because it's like
Yeah.
attached skin at that point. And so he finds out that like
Well, and then he
Denton,
also is just like over the top about it too, because he takes his head and he's just like continually smashing it against the ground. And I'm just like, oh, please stop.
well, and so then he's like, so what happened? And he and Harris is like, it was Denton's idea. He wanted to take Marconi down and other bad guys, and he said we could do it. So we kind of find out that they knew about Mech-Finn, and so they used him as a patsy so that they could
Yeah.
kill a bunch of bad guys as
And
Hexen
and
wolves.
get credit for taking him off the streets.
Yeah, and so they were going to like pin it all on Mech-Finn's. They could arrest him. I still don't understand how Mech-Finn is like some kind of drug lord person or
I
like
don't
crime.
understand how he fits into this necessarily, besides just being like part of this pack of
Feel
like
like
Tara's people.
they told us he was a crime boss, but he's never done any crimes except being a
No,
Loup-Garou, except
no.
being kind of a silly named person. So
Yeah.
he just wants to live in nature. But anyway, so they had
Also,
like
just quick note, I said Mars is chewing gum at this point, I think. He's smacking loudly. I can't let him
oh
off the hook.
God. That's amazing. And so Harris is like, yeah, we were gonna sick the street wolves on you. We were told you were dangerous. And so Dresden's like, at the end of the novel, Dresden goes, I never found out who told them I was dangerous. And I'm like, okay, sure. But he like leaves with Tara's crew. They go to the van and Susan is there because
Oh, just a second though. At the end of that chapter, Tara mentions how they aren't like animals because they're
oh
killing like humans, and because it's just for the joy and lust of it. And I did like that mention
yeah,
because I thought that was effective to have that in there, that it's not a animal thing to
wants
just
just
kill
kill
for
to kill.
joy and
Yeah.
lust after it. And so I was like, that's kind of a good ending to that. And I do like that we're getting some some depth in
Hmm.
certain places that I didn't expect in a
Well,
werewolf story, a
and
Loup-Garou
it's a
story.
it's a good juxtaposition with Ben, who is like obviously trying on something
Yes.
where like
And
she's
then Tara is
and
the
Tara's
opposite of that.
actually part of it, and she's like, no, we're not going to kill people just because we want to.
Right.
Like that's ridiculous. And so it's a
Right.
good juxtaposition between the two of them. So then they run away. They get in a van with
With
Susan,
Susan, who smells delightfully feminine.
and they drive to
Puke emoji.
Georgia's family mansion because she is rich.
Yeah.
Um, but my favorite part of this was, sorry guys,
They go to
put a
Burger King and
free
he's
spot.
wearing the Burger King crown.
No, he does put on the Burger King crown. I did like that. But also, they say in this, put on your free space. Hannah mentions living in Chicago because they're like, they went to her mansion near so and so's mini palace in the Gold Coast. Again,
Wait, what?
here's our little learning corner of what Chicago is. Chicago
Okay.
is a very big city. You want to know what it doesn't have in the Gold Coast? One of the more populated areas that is, in fact, right off Michigan Avenue. Houses with yards. So there
Mansions?
are mansions. Are no, there are mansions in the Gold Coast. Lots of rich people live
Okay.
there. The Pritzkers live in the Gold Coast area
Oh,
because it
okay.
is a very frou-frou area. So if you told me mansion, great. But there's no like long winding drive to a six-car garage. There's like a two-car garage with a nice little
But
fence around
it's
the
got to be
area.
like Scooby-Doo, where we
Yeah, but
drive down down a
and
long
so
lane in a
then they
gated community to a mansion.
he also talks about like so they like recoup at Georgia's and then they go to Marconi's like mini palace in the
Hmm.
Gold Coast where you don't have yards ever. And he's like, I had to go over the wall, and then I took so long to get there that they had already rounded up all the wolves, and all I can imagine is like a tiny little Gold Coast mansion where he got like shoved over a really tiny fence, and he's just like slowly stinking up there.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that is our context corner for Jim Butcher and Geography of Chicago
We
because
need that.
I giggled a lot because I used to walk through the Gold Coast a lot and there is not a yard to be seen. So
This is a lot of this makes me think like this is if I would have had to write a book about Chicago, I would be like, well, that one time when I went to the Field Museum,
there was so much yard. And it's like, yes, on the land that you can't build on.
I
Yes,
think I
yes, there
saw
is.
Soldier Field once on a bus.
Uh, and then 5 minutes later, I was in Ravenswood. And it's like, no, you weren't.
That Cubs
So
game was really fun, and we got a hot dog.
that's oh my gosh. I've recently gotten on TikToks where they're like, "How much do you pay for rent in Chicago? Could you show me your place?" And I can tell just based on the energy of the person and how much they spend, like what the apartment is going to look like.
Yeah.
Like, it just there's certain energies. So anyway, they go to the Gold Coast with its rolling hills and gated communities
And Burger Kings.
and Burger Kings and also a drive-through Burger King, pretty impressive in Chicago.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is where he has sexy sex time. Uh, and we find out that Tara might care about McFinn, but question mark. Like I never get a good where she's like, "Well, he's my fiance,
Did
so
you
I don't
skip
want
over
him
all
to."
the sexy sex time?
I did skip over the sexy sex time, but
Hannah.
at the end of the sexy sex
She's
time,
she's
she does give him a new jacket that she did put on her body naked.
I want to go back though and talk about the sexy sex time a little bit because first of all, you need I have a lot of notes on this because Susan, first of all, is wearing a shirt of Dresden's that says "Eat it." I wouldn't sit on
I
it.
I did not like that as much as I liked the cancel Easter we
I
found the
I
body
know. I just
because
needed to mention that.
she is
Um,
wearing that shirt, which is anti giving women sexual pleasure right before she has sex with
yes.
Dresden. And you know what? This was the most believable he has been as a 24-year-old is owning a shirt that was anti giving a woman
Yes.
oral pleasure. So
So then we have a moment where Susan like tries to convince him not to go, and he's like freaked out that she wants to have a little bit of a deeper relationship, it seems, and then she's crying on him, and they
and
have a
then he
passionate
cries
kiss,
on her.
and he's like kind of in and out of consciousness, it seems a little bit. She's cleaning him up, like cleaning up his wounds and
Mhm.
cleaning dirt off of him and everything, and they have sex. And I was unsure, like, was he asleep? Because he's mentioning like waking up and stuff like that. And I'm like, was he asleep or did he fall asleep? After I'm unsure.
I honestly read this as Fade to Black. Like Jim
I
Butcher did
didn't read
not
it
want
that
to
way
ride
that he couldn't.
as uh I read it more as Jim Butcher did not want to write a sex scene, so he just wrote this like implication of a sex scene,
Mm.
like, the whole 1 foot is on the floor of a bed type
I
thing.
suppose, but I have a specific note that says I need to know for sure if he's been awake because it sounds like he fell asleep when she was giving him a sponge bath and had sex with him.
But Laura, here's the thing. In the middle of this all, it was a fool's moon.
Yeah. Then we're told that Susan doesn't want to fall in love with Dresden and she wanted to remind him that there's more to the world, which is why they have sex. And that's when he cries. I said, this poor man needs therapy. I appreciate that we're getting some vulnerable moments because I think that Butcher did write some of the tortured parts of him a little better than I expected them to be, and it does fit honestly with the way that Dresden pushes everything down and comes off as
Yes.
this person that's just like, you know what I'm gonna do? Say a sarcastic remark to hide all the pain that I actually have. And that actually fit quite well. And then I have on here Naked Susan dresses Harry and
Okay,
then
but
gets
that
a
was what I was gonna
birthday
say
gift
is
from her. It's a new leather coat that she paid a fortune for, but also she wore it while naked before giving it to him. What a
so
weird
that
detail.
is the problem. Why? Yeah, it's very 90s coded where it's like, yes, women love being naked under trench coats. There are so many
Yes.
naked women in trench coats in this book where it's just like,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, I
It's
this
too many.
happened this happened a lot more in TV and books than it happened to me in my adult life. I have rarely
It
I've
happened in an episode of Modern Family once, and that's maybe the most believable of
yeah,
circumstances.
yes, because it was also a joke when it happened of
Exactly.
like, and they were in the hotel that they were going to be in, and it was like as a wife, but like you can tell when someone is naked pretty
Yes.
much. Like there's a no, thank you. So anyway, she gives him a coat that she's walked around naked in, and he's like, man, I love a good gift, and then immediately loses it in the next couple scenes.
Well, he says something about how he looks in the mirror and he sees his double in it. That's who was giving him advice earlier, was
Oh yeah.
his double that was wearing that specific Naked Susan jacket.
And he is just overcome with this. And he's like, damn, double damn, another person to worry about. And so they go to Marconi's place and he and the wolves, well, the wolves, Benny, I think, or what,
I think it's just,
Billy. There's so many names.
oh, are you
Billy
talking
is
about
a
like Billy and
wolf.
Georgia? Billy and
Yeah,
Georgia are in love.
they're both wolves and they're in love. And Billy is like, hey, we want to help you. And Justin's
And
like,
he's
I
like,
do it
I gotta
alone.
talk you out of this, kid.
You're
I
too
can't let you
young.
get
I'm
hurt. You're too young.
24.
I'm 24 and you're 20. I've got a world of experience under my
You
belt.
look up to me. What can I say? And he's like, well, listen, if you come in there with me, I'm the boss, not Tara. And
Yeah,
that never
he's
really
like,
comes back into
and the
play.
thing is, all of you are gonna listen to me. Like, okay,
And
whatever.
it barely comes into play where they get there and Tara's like, well, we have to go around the front. And he's like, I do not have stamina. I am dying. And
Yes, because how is he alive still?
he can't do magic. He has used himself up. He still had sex. He still had penis
That's
strength.
true. He had
Just
the
not,
energy for that.
but like not magic energy. Okay, they're two different types of energy. Um, I'm sure it was
He
very. I'm
he
sure it
will
was.
never need any kind of assistance getting it up, but
I mean,
he
here's the thing,
definitely is
Laura.
exhausted from like being beat to hell and
Here's the
shot.
thing. Knowing the t-shirt Susan was wearing, I'm pretty sure it was quick, dirty, and not very
She
satisfying
gave
for
him a
one of
sponge
them.
bath. The most
Okay.
sexual of experiences.
That's what I always try, a nice sponge bath. Um,
Oh, I'm so
so
bothered.
anyway, so Harry has to be thrown over a wall by the wolves, and
That
then
was
he
funny, honestly, because he like comes down. He's like, oh.
and then he's in the Gold Coast, so he's on an acre
Yeah.
of land he has to get across, and he slowly moseys over because he is in fact dying. And by the
Hmm.
time he gets there, all the wolves have been shot with. I thought they were dead, Laura. And then they're like, the tranks will wear off. And I'm like, oh, they didn't kill them?
Oh, I was gonna say
Like,
no, it was just tranquilizers.
it was just tranquilizers. But when they were like, I counted six, I was like, did we miss six children getting murdered off the
No,
page? Like, I
no,
was
Denton and all
bothered.
of his crew like had shot them with tranquilizers, and
Yeah.
Harris is like standing over the side. He's the one that's now like all like high on the power, needs to get his belt back.
Needs to get his belt back. And Harry's just watching them. And then Marconi comes out and
Marconi comes up, he's like dressed like a safari hunter.
he literally is just running circles around these FBI agents who, like, I totally understand. They've been taken over by their Hex and Wolf belts,
Yeah.
whatever. But, like, they did have to have some training. Like, they have to have some training as detectives. And Marconi walks up and he's like, well, Dresden has to be close by. My security cameras went out. And they're like, but how do you know that? And he's like, I analyzed what happens when wizards are around. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah,
And
Denton is doesn't do. Are you talking about Denton tricking
Denton
Marconi?
and well, no, I was talking about Denton and Marconi talking because at that point they're just chit chatting
Well, yeah,
and they're
because
like,
Marconi comes up on this whole thing and he's like totally unaware that like Denton and the Alphas are gonna
so he
totally
thinks
get him.
they're there to protect him because he called in
Yes.
help
Yeah,
because
because he's like,
people
I
think
need the FBI.
the Loup-Garou is
The
after me.
Loup-Garou's coming for me.
And they're rounding up all the wolves and they're pretending like, hey, they were all part of this big like bad to come get you. And so Marconi comes up to them to like chit chat with them, but he's like, hey, Dresden has to be about because my security camera went out. And they're like, but how do you know that? And he's like, because that's what happens when wizards show up. And I'm like,
Mhm.
did these people not research anything at all? Because Harry literally tells everyone that that's what happens to him
Yeah.
in technology. You just have to look at him and that's what he tells you. Um, so Harry's kind of like, well, if I don't stop them, they're definitely going to kill Marconi because they see him as a big bad, and this isn't going to go well. And so he is trying to hide from them while also protecting everyone. And also, he doesn't have any powers right now, so it's
Right.
not very helpful.
No.
Um, and he ends up getting caught.
Mhm.
Um, and Marconi, he like tries to tell Marconi, like, hey, they're gonna double cross you. And Marconi's like, I don't trust you. And then they double cross Marconi.
Yeah.
And they use him as bait to get McFinn to come to the land. This was a part that I wasn't sure I picked up on while I was reading it. So please fill me in, Laura.
Okay.
Why did McFinn know to go to Marconi's?
That I'm not sure.
Okay,
That I'm not
at
sure.
least I'm not the only one sitting here because they kept being like, McFinn will come. And I'm like, but why?
I
He's
just
in
kind of assumed
Chicago.
it was like he's drawn to the full moon, that there's a good light. I don't know for sure.
Look,
I don't know.
It's really hard to find good lighting in Chicago. So I'm gonna go to the Gold
There's a lot of light
Coast.
pollution, Hannah.
There are definitely no skyscrapers in the Gold Coast. It is not near some of the tallest buildings. You are correct. He just wanted a good selfie
So
location.
I don't know.
Uh
Are we still in chapter 30?
I think I've kind of bounced around a little bit.
Okay,
So,
because I just wanted to
yeah,
go
we just
back.
got to chapter 30 pretty much.
Okay, we just got to chapter 30. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So they like definitely double cross Marconi. They take, and then Harry is about to like
Harry's
go,
like sitting on the edge of the forest and he's like trying to figure out how to make his move.
and then they also bring up the White Council to everyone. And I'm like, I thought that
Mhm.
was a secret because Denton is like, well, we had to do that because
So
like,
many of these things are secrets that seem to be
look
well
at
known.
Denton has no idea that like Harry affects TVs, but he
Mhm.
knows all about the White Council. And so he like runs into Denton and he's like, yeah, we wanted to set Marconi up to say that he was the one who destroyed the circle, even though he wasn't. And McFinn will come after him now. I guess that's why they think it's going to happen
Mhm.
because they told McFinn that it was him all along. And he was like, we wanted to take people down, but we didn't want to do it because of the White Council. So we had to do it to blame this Loup-Garou, even though you kept killing on non-full moon at like nights. So the White Council should know what a Loup-Garou is. I bet they have their own Bob somewhere.
Well,
Um,
and this is the point where Denton starts pulling this whole like you think you're above the law, Dresden thing, and it bothers me because it's like
he thinks he's above the
you're
law.
you think you're above the law, and I got really frustrated at that point because I was like, excuse you, pot, meat, kettles,
Right. Well, and
because
so
that's what you're doing.
and then Harry is like getting upset with him and he's like, dude, like Murphy's smart. She's gonna put all this together. Like, even if you blamed me, like this is gonna happen. And then they bring Murphy out because of course they
I guess we
kidnapped
needed to
her.
mention at this point that uh Dresden is holding a gun to
Oh,
Denton,
yes, sorry.
and he uses that as leverage to get the other people to put their guns down,
And
and
their
then
belts, I
and
think.
their belts, and then they basically go off into the woods again to grab their hostage. And Dresden's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And Denton's like, "Look, you can either take your gun off me, and I will likely attack you, or you can let them back up."
Yeah.
And so they come back then, and they've got Murphy, who's been beat up and gagged, and he's like, "Well, if you hurt me, then we will kill Murphy." And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, great.
And so he does like swing his barrel at the gun at Harris and he like almost
Mhm.
tries to overtake them, but then they're able to stop them. And Denton says he's gonna huff and puff and blow
And then he
uh
has like a weird mention
Dresden's
about like
house down.
nursery death by
Death
nursery
by nursery
rhymes.
tale. And so they kind of overtake everyone. Harry's still kind of in and out of it because again he is
Doesn't he
very
get into a soul
concussed.
gaze too with
Oh
Denton?
yeah, he gets into a soul gaze with Denton.
And
Uh,
and this is where we see the background as to why Denton would have even said, "You think you're above the law." It's because he was a cop who was troubled and became bitter and jaded. And I'm
yeah,
like, of course he did. Of
just
course.
some A cab for you. And but then Denton sees like into Harry's soul and like sees the future, I guess, where Harry like
Yeah.
straight up probably murders him, and he's like, "I won't let you, wizard. I won't let
Yeah.
you." And I'm like, "What a weird thing." So anyway, they throw all the people into a pit.
Yeah, because Marconi shows up and he attempts to free Dresden, and then it ends up just being a big problem, and they're all thrown into a pit. And they
They hang
Marconi
Marconi
up
by
above
his
it.
wrists so that like the wolf tries to eat Marconi and then
So
falls
what
into
the
the
plan is
pit. And
basically they have him dangling there, and they're like, "What's gonna happen is the Loup-Garou gonna jump over this pit, grab you. You're gonna be too heavy. The rope will break. You'll fall down into the pit, and all of you'll be dead."
so it's pretty much just Looney Tunes at this point. Like,
Yes,
um, so they're all waiting there. Murph is, of course, like, I'm so sorry, Harry. And then
because
he's
she's
like, I'm so
finally like
sorry. And
figuring out
she's,
about
yeah.
Denton.
And she's like, I still like you, but I can't trust you. And it's like, but why? Nothing in this book has said that you cannot trust him.
Well,
Um,
honestly, he said
yeah,
that
that's
because he
fair.
says, "You can totally trust me. I won't bail on you." What does he do? Immediately bails.
And so they're all sitting there in the pit, just kind of talking. And he's like, I thought it couldn't get worse, but then it did. And we hear
Well, because
like the
the Loop
loop
Guru.
guru is coming.
But then,
Um,
like, Marconi is able to, like, get the part of the rope to swing down into them. And Dresden, like, shimmies up in it to save the rest of them. And
again, this is
Tara,
Looney Tunes.
well, then Tara kind of sacrifices herself and,
Yeah.
like, has the Loop Guru follow her.
And so
And then all the other wolves head that direction, too, because they're like, what?
they're all trying to like take down the loop guru and or get away from things. And so Harry wants to get Susan and some of the kids to safety. So he's like, you guys got to get back to the van. You have to now. And Susan's like, I don't want to leave you. And he's like, I can't help you if you're here. You're just a distraction. And so he's trying to figure out like how to deal with all these evil FBI wolves
Mhm.
and the loop guru being around and all of this other stuff. And so what does Harry decide to do, Laura?
He
He first
becomes a wolf.
but he also first tries to just use random magic and nothing works. But then
Lupus,
he
lupus,
just
lupus.
lupus lupara luparoso. I did appreciate it in this book. I don't know if we've talked about it in prior episodes. I forget, but they do talk about like why they use silly words
Yeah,
for
we
their
talked about this
magic. Okay,
in the
good.
last
Yeah,
episode that
I
there's
do like
actually
that.
like a meaning to like
Why
how they
it's
have to use
stupid.
words that don't necessarily mean something to
Yeah.
you.
And so he becomes a wolf and the power, it makes him real horny. No, it makes him
It
bloodlusty.
makes him very hungry for violence, basically.
Yes.
And then this is kind of a sad moment too, because he's getting all high on the wolf thing, and then Susan
Hmm.
like comes over and she's like, "Harry,
Well,
is
because
that you?"
he's
And
like
he
trying to
says that
decide
she
if he's gonna
smells of fear and desire, and they're mating.
I
I
blocked that
put,
part
she's
out.
terrified and I'm grossed out. Why
Well,
does
he
she
is
tell them
like
they're mating?
specifically killing FBI agents pretty much at this
Yes.
point, and it feels good.
It's
And
very
he just
violent.
really likes the bleeding. He stalks Denton. Denton like doesn't have his wolf abilities right now, and so like Harry's taking him down. And the only thing that keeps him from like full on killing him at that moment is Susan stops him with
Yeah,
the smell of her vagina.
pretty much.
And so he takes it off and he like curses Denton. And Susan's a little bit afraid of him, but also there's a Loup-Garou around. And
Hmm.
so Murphy's like, well, I'm going to stay with you. And he's like, Susan has to like keep running. You got to go. And he's like, Karen, you got to go with them. And she's like, no, I'm here with you. We're friends. And he's like, well, we got to save Marconi. And they're all like, but do we? And he's like, well, Marconi saved us. So
Did he save them? I don't know.
I mean, he threw a
He's
rope
trying to
down
save
to them.
himself.
Yeah, he was trying to save himself, and that was the best way to do it. So
Yeah.
anyway, like Harry goes back, he sees Harris is dead.
Yeah.
Lots of people are dead. There's bodies
Yeah. Harris
everywhere in
is
this book.
dead and it was gruesome. His head was all smashed in. Like, oh.
Mhm. And so he's trying to get
Susan and the Naked Alphas escape. I have a note.
Yes, they do. They do escape, but Harry is trying to get Marconi out of the pit, and he's like working on getting him out. He like finds the knot. Marconi's kind of like not talking with him, but trying to say something. And then all of a sudden, he like goes, Harry, he's in the pit. Or he goes, Harry, the pit. And the Loup-Garou's hiding in the pit.
Yeah.
Which is also hilarious to me because why was he doing that? He's a bloodthirsty hound.
I was gonna say, I thought he had like no control over
Right.
what was going
So
on,
why was it why hadn't he
but
eaten
he
Marconi
has
yet?
the intelligence to be
Wherewithal?
able to do that. Okay.
Yeah. It was just very. And then Harry tries to say fuego, and he goes, nothing happened except a little puff of steam, which I think is funny when a Loup-Garou is running at you. Also, probably scary, but still.
But then
Uh,
luckily he remembers that he does have a piece of silver that has been passed down to him, his mother's amulet.
the Deus Machina of this book is the dead mom amulet.
Yes.
Um,
The dead mom amulet. Harry has his dead mom amulet. We're all safe.
Also, he does lose his coat at this point because the Loup-Garou literally takes it off of him, and I'm
Dang
like, well,
it. It
Susan
had all
spent a
of naked
fortune on
Susan's
that.
skin cells all over that.
Well, it's about to have Tara's naked skin cells all over it. So yes, he realizes he has the amulet from his mother, and
And I was thinking that it would be turned into some form of like a bullet or something. No, it's just used as just like a and he just like throws it at him really hard.
Harry starts whipping it around like a lasso. He's like, I
Yeah.
can do this. I got one fight left in me. And as he's sitting there, swinging it around, kind of like I'm doing, this is a visual podcast, obviously.
Yes.
Murphy shows up, and the Loup-Garou is running at Murphy, and Harry is whipping this around for no. And Murphy's like, "Get down, Harry, get down!" And he's like, she's gonna kill me. She just doesn't trust me anymore. And I'm like, that is such a very specific reaction. And so she's like,
He
you gotta
never
get
gives
down,
Murphy
Harry.
any credit to be smart. Like he says, she's the best thing for Chicago. And then he immediately is like, what an idiot.
She's gonna kill me. And well, also, she doesn't do herself any favors in the narration of this book because every time she runs into him, she's like, I still think you're guilty. And it's like, then why are you hiring
like,
him?
Stop associating
hiring
with him.
Yeah. And so anyway, he's whipping it around, and Murphy's
And then he
telling him to
throws
get
it and it's
down.
just like boom, and it hits him and he's McFinn again.
But he's McFinn, but he's also dead. Like he like lets it loose. He says a little bit of power, whatever he has left. He's hurt, and like the amulet just goes straight into McFinn,
Yeah.
and makes him into a human and kills him because of the silver of his mom's amulet. And then Harry passes out because he thinks Murphy has killed him. She has not.
No.
He wakes up
because we learned that Murphy was competent all along, which threw us all for a loop.
That was the real Loup-Garou.
The real Loup-Garou was that Murphy was competent the entire time.
The real Loup-Garou
Denton was coming up behind Dresden.
Is the friends we made along the way.
Oh my gosh. The way when they explain this, even
Oh my God.
when she's
So
like,
what happened was,
Dresden,
guys,
Denton was
they're
coming up behind you. I was trying to save you.
both of them were being attacked by the silentest of killers.
Yes.
A giant ass Loup-Garou and a man with
And
a
another
giant,
werewolf.
and another werewolf who's running with a club. So quiet, guys. And neither one of them knew what was happening behind them. They both thought the other one was maybe attacking them.
Yes.
Murphy, a little bit less. She was kind of like, I don't
Yes.
know what Harry's doing. I don't trust it, but I have to shoot
But he
someone.
likely won't kill me.
But also, Harry was lassoing an amulet. So
Yes.
fair on Murphy. Okay. Also, in this moment, this poor Loup-Garou man who didn't ask to be
I
cursed.
know.
Harry's like, he looked so peaceful, dying.
Shut up,
And I'm
Harry.
like,
Shut
wow.
up, Harry.
That's
Harry,
right there when I
stop.
looked into that girl's face and I said, I might have to kill your
I might kill him. I might kill your dad.
But anyway, so they both hit the other person for them.
Yes.
And
Saving each other and Chicago.
yeah, so and then they talk about like kind of what happened in the roundup and his like record scratch.
Yeah, it's the
ending
record
chapter.
scratch Ferris Bueller of it all.
And
Marconi offered Dresden another job again, and Susan
Dresden
videotaped the whole thing and submitted it to WGN.
which is how I used to watch the WB, is through WGN.
And Murphy got fans because of this whole thing,
right,
and the
because the
investigation was
videotape.
called off. She even got an interview on CNN.
But also 2 days later, the video footage disappeared and everyone thought it was a hoax.
Yes.
Those two things don't track, but okay.
I just
also,
thought it was funny. Like, okay, when did we know that Susan was just like standing over at the side videotaping it all? How did
with,
she
like,
stay out of all of this chaos?
with an excellent camcorder, apparently.
Yeah,
She was just
apparently,
carrying
like,
that
what
around.
did she have?
And so, yeah, she was videotaping the whole thing. It cut out as Harry threw an amulet at a wolf. And so all they saw was Murphy shooting it. So everyone was like,
Yeah.
Murphy is competent at her job. We will take off internal investigations, even though we caught her on camera shooting an FBI agent. You would still have internal investigations looking into that.
No,
That's not how that works.
No, all is forgotten.
He had a club, so we knew he was evil.
It's all good. It's all good.
I heard he and Ben were literally having sex all the time. As wolves and as not wolves. And so anyway, yeah, they videotaped the whole thing. Susan gets a great deal out of it. Marconi is like, hey, I helped save your life. You should still work for me. And Dresden's like, you did that for yourself. And he was like, I hoped you wouldn't notice that. And Harry was like, okay. And he says, don't call me Harry. He really hates when Marconi calls him Harry, but he calls
What's he want him
John.
to call him?
Dresden.
Dresden.
And so then he's just like, yeah, and it took me a while to talk to Susan again because I really scared her and I just don't trust
I'm really
myself.
scared of commitment.
But she sent me flowers and she wore me down, guys. And that is
I
feminism.
I thought it was Tara that sent him flowers.
No, Susan, he was scared of.
Okay.
She was scared of him, and so was like, yeah, but she'd send me flowers sometimes or have a pizza delivered to my office when I was working late. Hell of a girl.
Well, and then doesn't Tara meet up with him later? And
she meets up with him later.
She takes it off and is naked again.
So
and I said, why naked again?
Because she's actually. Oh, Harry goes, I never thought about a wolf who could change into a human. And I'm like, so Tara was a wolf the whole time? That explains a lot.
This was something we hadn't thought of, which was wolf wears. Or the opposite of werewolves.
Wolf wears the opposite. What if the wolf wears you, Laura? So yeah, she's
somebody listening to this knows what the opposite of a werewolf is, and they're gonna be so pissed.
Just a werehuman.
A werehuman?
Yeah,
but that could be anything, any kind of animal.
They said that they could make werebuffaloes and stuff like that.
It could be any kind of human, couldn't it? Or any kind of animal, right?
Yeah, if they're changing into a human, but like you could have werebuffaloes, which are humans that change into buffaloes.
Yeah, we learned about that there's summoned by indigenous peoples.
Yeah, But anyway, so she is a wolf
ride.
A
wolf wear.
And Harry Dresden is still Harry Dresden with his.
And as for me,
Mr.
I'm still Harry Dresden.
And that's the end of the book. So Harry
A lot
Dresden.
happens. Also, we forgot to mention that one of
We
the
forgot to mention something.
FBI people in Denton's crew, that she was shirtless for a lot of it, and
Oh yeah.
Dresden kept mentioning that she had lovely breasts and he was getting distracted.
Harry gets distracted by
A lot
all
of boobs.
things.
A lot of boobs.
He and all women want to show him their boobs. So,
I mean, why not?
this was a weird book. I
Said that so seriously. He
I was
looked
thinking about it.
straight into the camera and just said with the most serious expression, "This was a weird book."
It was. Like I'm just thinking about it. So like, well, now is our wrap-up thoughts before we do like
Yeah.
themes and characters next week. I'm like, what are we gonna talk about? Because this is a weird one.
You know, I do have some points I want to make right now, and then we can bring them up and go in depth on them next week. But I really think that Jim Butcher needs to write either horror or a lit
Mm.
fic. I would love to see him stretch out his writing chops a little bit and
Yeah.
write in either of those genres because I think he would be really effective.
Oh
Honestly,
yeah.
for horror, he's got the chauvinism down. And that is often a theme in horror books, but he's very effective with writing some of this gory stuff that is very, very visceral and hard to read about. And I think like he also does a great job writing some of, like I mentioned, the tortured soul parts of
Yeah.
Dresden. And I'm like, I think he could really write an effective horror novel. I was kind of looking through his Goodreads and I didn't see anything besides like fantasy
Yeah.
on there. So listeners, if you know of any of Butcher's other works that are not within the fantasy genre, let me know because I would be curious to see him kind of stretch
I
his.
mean, a lot of horror has some fantasy elements to it,
Yeah,
but
I'm thinking more like dark stuff, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And I think he could be really effective at it. I also just think litfic would suit him well just because I really would like to see him kind of delve a little more into like mental illness in
Hmm.
his characters, and I think that he would be able to do it just from what I'm picking up on in Dresden.
Yeah.
And I do want to maybe talk about that a little more, but I just before we get out of this and I forget about it, just wanted to mention that because
Yeah.
I thought they were things that were touched on briefly in this book. And this was a really weird book, but there were things like that that were touched on. I'm like, Butcher does have a lot of talent. I just wish that he had the ability to not be like trying to bring these things into werewolf stories or
Right.
Loup-Garou stories because I think if he were able to, write maybe, and maybe he doesn't want to, maybe he literally just loves fantasy as a genre, and that's totally fine. But I just think that I'm picking up on a lot of like instances in this book of someone who wants to maybe talk a little bit more about mental illness
Hmm.
or wants to dive into a little bit more of like the horror of being a human.
Yeah.
And I think that that could be really interesting.
So I will say that I do think that I preferred this book to the first book.
Same, same,
Yeah,
hard
I think
same.
that this one was much better. So that's good.
Far more
That's looking,
interesting.
it is far more interesting. And I did say I get a little tired of like, sometimes I think you should trust readers to be like, sometimes mysteries they don't have to intermix. And I hope we get
Yeah.
a little bit more of that where he plays with mysteries more moving forward. Because I don't need every single murder mystery to be layered on top of each other. I could just have
Hmm.
like, oh, this one, here's the real whodunit, and here's the real, different people. So, but I did prefer this one. I
Me
do
too.
think he's really effective as a writer. Um, yeah, overall, I'm interested, but this was a very strange book. And Laura, do you want to hear a slight spoiler
For what book? This one?
for all of them moving
For all of
forward?
them? How much of a spoiler is it?
Not much, just like
Okay, go ahead.
characters who will show up. The alphas are here to stay.
Oh, damn it. That is not the spoiler I wanted. I was worried you were gonna be like, he marries Karen Murphy. I was like, no.
I wasn't going to ruin something like that for you. But I was talking to Paul, who, guys, as everyone knows, my fiance is a huge fan of these books. And he goes, "Oh, is this the book where you find out this about the wolves?" And I go, I mean, I didn't yet. And he goes, "That must happen in another one." And I go, "They're still here."
Oh no.
So, guys, join us next week
Also,
as
I just need
we
to mention really quickly, I'm still on Jim Butcher's Goodreads page. The most popular question answered is, why is your hair so luxurious and sleek? And Butcher responded, it feeds upon the souls of its fan people.
perfect. You know what? He should write horror because that is
Yeah.
beautiful.
It just makes me laugh so much. Something totally unrelated to his work.
No, I love that. But guys, join us next week as we do a deep dive into what is seriously a very strange book.
A very
And
weird Loup-Garou story.
a very weird Loup-Garou story. And the moral of the story is, aren't we all Loup-Garous, really?
We're all
No.
Loup-Garous deep down.
So join us as
Or
we do
wolf-wears.
a discussion of the themes and characters of book 2 in Jim Butcher's Dresden Files series, the book that we just talked about for so many weeks.
This
and
book is around.
If you are so inclined, please make sure that you are rating, reviewing, and subscribing. These are all great ways to show support. Or head over to
or
our
just share.
Patreon. Yeah, share. You could also become a member of our Patreon. We have $1 tier, $3 tier, $5 tier, and $10 tier, and different things at each of the tiers. We have seasons 1 through 3. We have bookmarks up for each of our seasons that you can print off and use.
Really
that
cool.
are designed by Hannah. And we also have bonus episodes such as a watch party to Madame Web. Or a discussion into media literacy, which was our bonus
cool.
episode. And it was a ton of fun to do. So please make sure you're doing all of that, or check out what's happening at ourpod.com. We have some excellent blog posts going up with some author highlights that you should definitely be checking out and reading those books. It is also where we keep our track of what's going on with our episodes. So, like, if you want to know what our next bonus is, we're having Jess Spay on for Paladin Unbound in 2 weeks. So make sure you're reading that in preparation for our author interview with him. So please make sure you're checking all of those things out. We really appreciate you all listening along.
Yeah, thanks for listening. We really are glad you're here.
We have some new listeners with our Jim Butcher series, so definitely welcome. Hope you're enjoying, and make sure you're looking over at the Tickety Talk where I post little.
I'm so nervous
pieces.
Jim Butcher's listening.
So I don't think Jim Butcher is listening, but we did get a couple of people.
Podcast, Jim Butcher.
We did get a couple of people commenting on some of our TikTok posts that I just don't tell you about. So,
oh
no, nothing bad. But remember that
Jim Butcher?
We're just it's not Jim Butcher. Just remember we're 2 girls who are just laughing about Loup-Garous.
We're just here for a fun time.
We're here for a fun time, and we're here to riff because we think we're funny. So thank you for joining along and hopefully laughing with us. Bye.
Bye.